Good evening. How are you? And if it's a good morning, how are you? And if it's good afternoon, how are you? Whenever it is when you're watching this, I hope you're being glorifious, because it's a glorifious day. All right. So I am Dan Crowley. I am a life coach with counseling skills. And tonight we're going to talk about the shards of reality, emotional response, and conflict. So we have slides that go along with this all the way to conflict. I think in conflict I may just ad-lib it. Okay? So we go from here. If you have questions, you can always contact me at 541-325-2118. So this is chapter 4 of the 8 sessions we're going to be doing. And this chapter's going to help us deal with emotions and their triggers and why they're different for everyone, but the same. How is that? So I suggest you get another sheet of paper, because we've got sheets of paper for every one of these so far. And that's the reason. The reason is because it will make you remember better if you write it down. I have found in my life and my experience that if I read something, it doesn't really imprint on my mind. But if I copy it in my own words, then it imprints and it stays with me much longer. So I'd suggest you do that. But if you don't, that's okay too. Your choice. So making your own notes lets you put this knowledge into your own words, which I just said. And when knowledge is put into our own words and used to dictate our own actions, it becomes our very own wisdom. So the first thing to know is that all beliefs become expectations of how we, us, ourselves, others, them, and the whole world acts. Okay? Each of us has our own mindset on how we should be, and we project that out on how they should be. And as we project that out on how they should be, we project it out on how the world should be. Okay? Like, there should not be a conflict in Israel right now, or in Ukraine. Okay? However, it's happening, and it really, truly upsets me. We want to go from that into looking at our physical, emotional, and intellectual security. And that's the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave. Only it's reversed on the slide. So when our expectations are met, everything is great. Okay? If I'm here at 7 and the recording starts at 7, and I'm able to do it without missing too many words, I'm feeling great, okay? Because I'm doing what I expect me to do. The swan is manning the cameras, and she's got it all tuned in, and she's doing what she's supposed to do. My expectation is met. The folks here listening, if they're eyeing me and listening attentively, I'm good, because they're doing what I expect them to do. Right? It's the same for you. If you're in a life situation and you have an expectation, and that expectation is being met either by yourself, others, or the world, you're going to feel good. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. They told me that when I was 3. If you be good in mind, everything will be okay. Yeah. I tried that. Okay, so the world order beliefs, and value judgment beliefs, which we talked about in the second part of the series, which is the part of our subconscious mind, which all of our thoughts come from. Okay, they form or become the expectations of ourselves, others, and the world, and how we think our world should be. Okay. And so physical, emotional, and intellectual security are ensured when all of our expectations are met. That's where we stand on life base. You remember again, session 2, when we talked about mind, we talked about us standing on life base. Everybody stands on their own life base. Okay? And life base is where we think and where we feel, and how thinking and feeling directs and influences our actions. So That's how we do it. We think, okay? So suppose that we're here and all of a sudden the door breaks in and people come in masks, okay, with guns pointing at us. It's not what I expect. I'm probably going to be a little bit shaky, okay, because it doesn't meet my expectations. Oftentimes I cross 5th Street walking, and a car in the lane that I'm going to cross first will stop. And I should just be able to walk right on across the street. However, the cars in the other lane do not always stop. So I will get to the point where I can see the other lane before I go on, okay? Because I expect myself to keep myself safe. Okay? That's one of my responsibilities for me, to keep myself safe. So all of our expectations are met, we feel joy, and think we're secure in our interpretation of reality. If I were to go across the street, which I've seen some people do, and they don't stop to check the other lane's traffic, and a car comes rushing by, they have to really step back in a hurry. And they do, fortunately. But just recently, one man didn't and got hit. That's bad. So we're all duped by the false security that we know what's going to happen. Okay? That we can trust our expectations. But often, we have to learn to distrust the trust we have of the situation as it should be, so we can be prepared to act on the situation as it is, if that makes sense. A lot of times I use long sentences, but I try to break them up with short breaths. Okay. So an illustration of what dupes us follows, and it'll be different than the one I just said. But this is where the whole thing comes in, okay? So Sir Francis Richard Burton, okay, not the actor, but I think he was a duke in England who lived from 1821 to 1890, spent much time in the Mideast, and became infatuated with the Sufi religion, I think it is. And when he came back to England, he wrote this epic poem, which contains 500 and some couplets. One of the couplets talks about reality. In the series of books that W.E.B. Griffin wrote about the Marines, they talk about this epic. And they describe it as a myth of reality. And the myth is that once there was a mirror, and the mirror was shattered. We don't know how it was shattered. In my mind, somebody took a rock and threw it. Okay? But it was shattered. When we looked in it, when all of us looked in it, we all got the same picture of reality. We all knew what there was to know. We all knew what was expected. We all did what was expected, and everything was great. No conflict, no wars. Wonderful. Great. All right? Wishful thinking. But the mirror got shattered, and since then, each one of us has picked up a shard of this mirror. We call it personality development. Okay? But we picked up this shard, and we looked at it, and we thought, hey, this is reality. But then the person over here picked up their shard, and they said, hey, this is reality. And in the shards, it was the same, but different. There was one or two things that didn't match up. And so we all hold our own piece of reality. Okay? It's all ours. So, and that statistic has changed. It's now 8.2 billion of us believe our shard of reality is a full reality. And this is the reason there's so much difficulty in the world, because my reality is my reality, and if you confront it, I'm going to defend it. Your reality is your reality. If I confront it, you're going to defend it. So when one or more of our expectations is not met, we suffer a loss to our reality. So if someone were to break in here with guns to rob the library, God forbid, our shard of reality would not work, because no one's supposed to break into the library. A bank, perhaps, but not a library. Right? In my shard of reality, libraries are safe places. Here you come to learn wisdom, or enjoy a book, or look at a movie, or have a meeting. That's what the library is about. It's about being peaceful and calm. It's not about violence and outrage. So as a result of having lost our shard of reality, we also have a loss to our world order beliefs. Okay? It's very important that we understand our world order beliefs, because those are the rules that we live by. Okay? And an easy way to understand them is to look at your absolutes in your sentences. I must go to work. I should not do that. I have to be home at 7. Those are rules that we live by. Okay? And when those rules are broken, then our emotions will come up. Okay? So it's real important to look at your rules to know that when one's broken, you're going to feel something. We have within our psyche an emotional response and an intellectual response. We also have two forms of working that. Some folks have emotional responses, which they then rationalize. Other people rationalize and have emotional responses. Okay? So you got to know, what do? Do you think first, or do you feel first? If you think first, your feelings follow. If you feel first, your thinking's going to follow. Our emotions are geared to our shard of reality. When we have a loss, we have an emotional response, and the first emotional response is hurt. Because a loss is actually a problem. The problem has to do with the loss of our belief of what should be. Okay? So if I'm driving down the street in my old pickup, and the right front wheel falls off, I've had a loss of my belief that the right wheel should stay on. Okay? But it didn't. It fell off. Okay? And in my old pickup, there was no jack. And so I was kind of stuck on the wayside there, but I had the wisdom to know that that loss caused me a hurt in terms of my truck not doing what it's supposed to. Okay? And I called the people that can come and change my tire, and they did. Okay? But changing the tire wasn't all that happened, because the wheel fell off, so I had to have it pulled to the garage in order to put the wheel back on. But then we had to find the wheel, because it's an old truck. And it took 6 weeks to find the wheel, and I walked to work for 6 weeks, and that was grand for me physically, but not psychically. So I was hurt, but the hurt told me that I'd experienced a loss to my shard of reality. So on your sheet of paper, so first I was disappointed. Okay? Disappointment falls under hurt. Then, when they told me it was going to take forever to find a replacement for my wheel, I was sad. Okay? And then, as I walked for 6 weeks, I had lots of sorrow. Okay? So those are all feelings that come under hurt. All right? Whenever we have a loss of an expectation, those feelings are going to come up. You might not call it hurt, but you might say, I'm really sad. Okay? A friend of mine's brother overdosed last month and died. Okay? She's feeling very, very sad right now, very much sorrow. She can't believe that her brother actually took another fentanyl when he was trying to get clean. Okay? I feel very sorry. I feel very sad for her that she's having to deal with this, because her oldest brother was killed in a car wreck 21 years ago. So she's had 2 brothers that have died when the expectation is my siblings will live, right? So she's very sad and very sorrowful right now. So you might want to look at your feelings as we go through this and look at the categories and then what feelings you have that fall under the categories. So one thing we need to know about hurt is that it can become an invisible emotion, right? Because the problem that we're facing will tell us that we have a hurt, but that's not the only emotion that comes with problems, okay? So the feelings following hurt can overwhelm the hurt, and it's often those feelings that we act on without thinking. So there are 3 possibilities of the emotional categories which follow hurt. One of these is anger, one is shame, and the other is fear. And that's 4 of the 5 emotional categories. Okay? Hurt, anger, fear, shame. We'll start with anger. And we start with anger because that's the emotion I feel when I lose an expectation. When an expectation of mine is not met, I get mad. So it happens when I think someone or something else has caused the loss of my reality or my expectations or what I think should be, okay? As in the case of my truck. Okay? When I lost the wheel, first I was surprised, I went into shock, but then I got angry. The truck was a gift. It should not have fallen apart 3 weeks after I got the gift, okay? So I got angry, and then I directed the anger first at the truck and then at the folks who gifted me the truck. Why did you give me a truck that was going to fall apart 3 weeks after you gave it to me when I'd already spent $1,000 just to keep it running? Okay? I'm mad. That masked my hurt, it masked my ability to solve the problem, although I was able to do that because in my life, I have learned through my life to think and then feel. So I thought, oh, this is an unexpected shock, and I'm angry about it, but the problem is the tire, the wheel that fell off, and I need to fix that so I can get on with my life. But what's important is that anger can mask hurt. Anger can also mask fear and shame. Okay? So I'm angry, but I have a fear of how much this tire is going to cost me. All right? It's an old truck. It's 42 years old. They don't make parts for my truck anymore. You have to find them. So I took it to my mechanic, and he said, we'll find you a part. Then he called me the next day and said, you know what? There's not a part available in the whole United States of America. I said, this can't be true. He said, it's true, but we'll keep looking. And he looked for a long time, and I patiently waited, my anger simmering. And finally, one of his dealers told him about a person in Portland who had old stock of old cars, or had stock for old cars. So he called this person. That person called back and said, yeah, I have a tire, a rim, that will fit for you, and I have a hub that you can put on, and everything will be cool. So we bought it. And guess what? When I got my truck back, what do you think I felt? Some joy. Okay? Joy is the most important emotion we can have, because joy is what makes us feel good. In joy, that you can feel good, you can feel excited, you can feel euphoric, you can feel all kinds of things. I felt a little bit euphoric when I got my truck back, and I didn't have to walk anymore. We can become afraid when we're hurt, and we don't mask with anger, we might mask with fear. And we can become afraid that whoever it was that hurt us will do something else that they shouldn't do, which will be bad for us. Example of that can be, well, I was afraid that they would never find the part for my truck and I'd have to buy a new car, and I can't afford a new car, so I don't want to buy a new car. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So I worried for a while too, because I was afraid. And worry is a part of fear, as is nervousness, and as is the state of being of anxiety. Okay? Anxiety is, the base root of anxiety is fear. But shame will happen when we do something that causes us a loss to our shard of reality. Okay? So if I'm here and I'm thinking that I'm doing a wonderful job and the audience is looking at the books and wondering when I'm going to get through and thinking, oh my gosh, why did I even come here? I'm probably going to get a little bit embarrassed, feel a little bit guilty for not having practiced better, and hurry up and get out of here, taking my shame and dragging my tail behind me. Shame happens when we do something that causes a loss to our shard of reality. My shard of reality, in this case, is being good enough to present this in a fashion that's hearable, in a fashion that's understandable, in a fashion that connects one slide to the next and makes sense all around. Okay? If I lose that, or any part of that, I'm not going to feel like I did a good enough job. That's going to affect the worth that I have of myself, and it's going to make me think that, oh my gosh, I should have done better. I didn't do good enough. I feel ashamed. That can happen too when we think we might do something we shouldn't do. And the other thing about fear is it's the most complicated emotion we have. Okay? Because fear is based on the losses of our past, projected into our future, felt in our now. Okay? That's a definition that sometimes is hard to understand. But, so if I've had, for instance, well, for a while I was an alcoholic, right? Then I sobered up. But when I sobered up, for the first year that I was sober, I had a fear that I might take a drink. I didn't want to take a drink because I didn't want to go to jail again. And I didn't want to be a drunk on the road. Okay? So I quit, but the fear of drinking again was there until I had enough time of not drinking to become comfortable in my own skin without a drink of alcohol to make me more comfortable in my own skin. Okay, thank you. Joy happens when all of our expectations are met. Okay. And I said earlier that one of the feelings of joy is exaltation, euphoria. And so an example of that, and I use my own examples because they were what fit for me, but I'm a high school dropout. I went into the Air Force when I was 17, stayed in the Air Force for 20 years, got my GED, got a job that I loved, being a psychiatric clinic technician, and decided that that's what I wanted to do when I really grew up, so I started college. And I graduated in the Air Force. I graduated with a bachelor's degree. Okay. As soon as I retired from the Air Force, I went into a master's degree and ended up with a master's in social work, clinical social work. But when I walked across the stage to get my bachelor's degree, the euphoria I felt at having completed a 10-year program and really getting to the climax, to the end, the euphoria I felt was more than I've ever felt in my life in terms of joy. Okay? The marriage didn't cause me that much joy, the ceremony. Getting the medals that I got in the Air Force, which I did get a couple of medals, getting non-commissioned officer of the quarter didn't really matter. But going across the stage and getting that bachelor's degree after 10 years of working, the euphoria it completely overwhelmed me. You've heard the saying, oh, you're walking on air. That's the way I felt as I walked across that stage. That lasted for about 30 minutes. Okay. In that time, it came down to just, hey, this is good. I got my degree. Let's go celebrate and have dinner. And then the restaurant that we chose to go to, which we really liked, because it had a beehive on the inside, because it was in plastic, and the bees would come and they'd make their hive inside the wall. And so you could go and watch them be busy, flying around and making nectar or whatever they make, honey. So we went there, and it was closed for the season. Didn't know that. Okay. So then it turned from euphoria to feeling good to disappointment. It was that quick. Within 30 minutes, gone from euphoria to good to hurt. So when your expectations are met, you're going to feel good. When they're not met, you're going to feel bad. But if you know the category of the feeling, you know the category and the feeling that falls under that you're feeling, you can begin to expect that you will feel that when a loss in your life happens. And if you understand that you feel that, and you know it, you have connected your intellectual response to your emotional response. And by doing so, you become more in control of yourself and more able to drive your behavior in a way that's positive for you and not negative. And that's important. Most of us, I think, well, if you use the 80-20 rule, 80% of us are letting our emotions drive us rather than our intellect. Yeah. That's the Pareto rule. The hurt happens whenever one of our expectations, anger happens when we think it's somebody else. We can be angry at ourselves too. Okay? When we do something that doesn't meet our expectation of our behavior, we can get mad at ourselves. Then we can fault ourselves, and then we will give ourselves shame, and then we'll feel less than we are. So always complete your list of your feelings contained in your emotional categories, and then you can begin to understand when you think something, that feeling is going to follow. So here's the thing. You and I, as we're living in our own expectations, as we're doing what we think is right, good, and fair, we have no problem. Okay? But as I said at the beginning, if I have an expectation that you don't meet, or you have an expectation that I don't meet, we have conflict. Okay? So conflict occurs when I have to defend my reality against your reality. Your shard and my shard don't mix, and we will have conflict. Conflict means that we will get angry, we'll get hurt, we'll have shame, we'll be afraid, and joy won't happen. Okay? So our next presentation is understanding the triggers that cause our emotions and the meanings that cause our emotions, and the one after that is how to deal with our emotional responses, as well as how to solve intellectually the conflicts that happen because of the unmet expectations that you have of me or I have of you. Thank you. Have a great night.